so I want to talk about your theory of mass formation. Over the last few years, that became a topic of conversation. I mean, everywhere from the Joe Rogan Experience to Fox News to Forbes Magazine, New York Post. I mean, for a season, you were the leading psychologist in the world talking about what was taking place during this COVID-19 pandemic, or I like to just call it situation, because we all experienced a lot of psychological anxiety, fear, people telling us what we needed to do. We'll get into that, but you started to articulate a theory of here's what I see happening right now as you observe that at least first year of the COVID-19 situation happening. So could you first describe what is a theory of mass formation? And then we can apply it to maybe what we all experienced during the last few years so people listening and watching this can start to understand how does it apply to a real world situation and why should we be so aware of not being formed like into groupthink? Because that's essentially mass formation, is how does groupthink set in on a population? Yep. So share more about the theory.
Yes. A few years before the corona crisis, I started to investigate that phenomenon already. And I started to think about the related phenomenon of totalitarianism. And it's extremely important to understand the relationship, because what we are witnessing now, I think, is the emergence of a fully fledged new totalitarian system. Like, the most important thing is this, that people often confuse totalitarian systems with classical dictatorships, and that's something completely different. In a classical dictatorship, people are just scared of the dictatorial regime, and that's why they just accept that this dictatorial regime top-down imposes its social contract to the population. But in a totalitarian state is something completely different. In a totalitarian state, in the first stage of the emergence of a totalitarian state, you first have the emergence of a mass formation. That means a kind of group formation where people very fanatically start to believe in a certain ideology, and so fanatically, this group formation has very specific effects at the level of individual mental functioning. The first thing is that people who are in the grip of a mass formation are not capable anymore of taking a critical distance of what the group believes in. Second, people who are in the grip of a mass formation are, in a strange way, radically willing to self-sacrifice everything. Also the health and of their children, the future of their children. Doesn't matter. In a mass formation, individual identity and the awareness of individual interests is completely replaced by group identity. Completely. Everyone, mass formation uniformizes. It puts everyone in the same uniform, literally and metaphorically. And then the third characteristic is that in a mass formation, people start to become radically intolerant for everyone who thinks differently, to the extent that if a mass formation lasts long enough, people will report everyone to the state who doesn't go along with the masses. Even a child will report its own parents, and a parent its own children. I had this conversation with Shorif Eshtali. You can still find it on the internet. She was a woman of the upper class of Iran who lived there during the revolution of 1978, which actually was a huge mass formation. She was forced to witness how a mother who reported her son to the state put the noose around the neck of her son when he was on the scaffold, and when he died, she was proud to receive a medal for heroineship. That's a dramatic last stage of a mass formation, and this mass formation, this process of mass formation, has always existed, but the last few centuries it became stronger and stronger and stronger, and it had to do with a few things. In the first place, the loneliness in the population, which increased, and in the second place, because throughout the last few hundreds of years, leaders relied more and more on a kind of manipulative speech which we call propaganda and which they disseminate through mass media. It is the combination of these two things, the increasing loneliness and the development of propaganda, which together make that mass formation can last longer, become bigger, and become the basis of a new state system which is much more destructive than a classical dictatorship, because it has a huge secret police at its disposal, namely this part of the population, which so fanatically believes in the narrative that they are willing to report their own children to the state. That's the problem.